Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, the UN General Assembly formally adopts a resolution calling for North Korea to be referred to the International Criminal Court for human rights abuses. A defiant Vladimir Putin blames external factors for Russia's economic meltdown and says it may take 2 years for the country to return to growth. Plus, the White House says the cyber attack on Sony Pictures that forced a major movie release to be pulled is a national security matter. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, December 19th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, the UN General Assembly has voted in favour of referring North Korea to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. The non-binding resolution passed with 116 members in favour, 20 against and 53 abstentions. The UN Security Council will meet next Monday to discuss the resolution, but it's almost certain to face stiff opposition from veto-wielding powers, China and Russia. Because of this, watchers say that while the Assembly vote does increase international pressure on North Korea, it's a largely symbolic move. North Korea's envoy to the UN lashed out at the passage of the resolution, calling it the product of a political plot and confrontation. This vote comes after a UN Commission released a report in February that detailed the extent of abuses in the north, including political prison camps, torture, starvation and mass killings. The UN General Assembly also passed a resolution condemning rights abuses in Syria and Iran, but did not go as far as referring them to the ICC. Now, in the third and final part of our special three-part series of reports on Kim Jong-un's first 3 years in power in North Korea, we're going to take a look at Pyongyang's rare attempt to re-engage with the outside world. But, as our Hwang Sung-hee tells us, it merely served to deepen the regime's diplomatic isolation.
Getting cozy with Russia, sending a high-level delegation to South Korea, negotiating the abductee issue with Japan, and releasing American detainees. North Korea engaged in a series of unusual diplomatic overtures this year as it found itself on the outs with its longtime ally, China. But the efforts proved unsuccessful.
Led by the United Nations, North Korea came under strong pressure to improve its human rights issue. Consequently, its efforts to diversify diplomacy hit hurdles and the regime became even more isolated.
Pyongyang warned of more nuclear tests to counter the latest UN push on its human rights violations.
In their attempts to eliminate the state and social system of the DPRK is compelling us not to refrain any further from conducting nuclear tests.
But analysts doubt Pyongyang will be so hasty with a nuclear test, since that would anger its allies China and Russia, although the regime will likely launch a violent protest.
Their strategy, their playbook, is to respond with force. Fight fire with fire. Another nuclear test, another missile launch. Satellite launch, I think, will be coming in 2015.
That would further delay the possible resumption of the long-stalled six-party nuclear talks involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia. Nonetheless, experts say North Korea will be more aggressive with multilateral dialogue next year and seek diplomacy at the highest level.
In order to end its current diplomatic isolation, North Korea will be more vocal about resuming the six-party talks. In that process, it could seek a visit to China or Russia by Kim Jong-un.
Seoul's Unification Ministry echoes that view. It expects Pyongyang to use all means available for a bilateral meeting with Washington. There could also be some progress in negotiations with Japan by July, marking the one-year anniversary of opening such talks. And if these all-out efforts to end its diplomatic isolation fail, the ministry says North Korea could seek an opening by turning to South Korea. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The Constitutional Court will deliver its ruling on whether to disband Korea's minor opposition Unified Progressive Party later on this Friday. The left-wing party has been accused of violating South Korea's constitutional order and of trying to instigate a rebellion against the South Korean government. Now, these accusations date back to last year when UPP lawmaker Lee Seok-gi and 3 other party members were accused on charges of plotting to topple the government and blow up major facilities in the event of a war with North Korea. Now, some lawmakers, however, from the opposition parties are urging the court to refrain from disbanding the UPP, saying that it would go against the principles of democracy. They are also calling on the court to deliver a fair ruling and not be swayed by political pressure. Just last month, UPP chief Lee Jung-hee delivered her closing arguments, saying the party had no affiliation whatsoever with Pyongyang and the government was guilty of political suppression. US Congressman Mike Honda, who has been at the forefront of steering efforts to resolve the issue of Japan's wartime sexual slavery of Korean women, is in Korea right now for a 5-day visit. And he met with reporters in Seoul on Thursday, where he said it was time for Japan to take action on this highly emotive issue. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
A U.S. lawmaker says Japan needs to recognize its historical responsibility and apologize for its wartime sexual enslavement of women. Speaking to reporters in Seoul, Representative Michael Honda says this is a problem that needs to be resolved with urgency, considering the age of the victims. Only 54 of the Korean victims are still alive, and their average age is 88.
The harmony, they're getting older. And I don't want us to use the tactic of outweighing them and, waiting until they all pass away. That would not be acceptable.
Honda, who is of Japanese descent, also said it is nonsense to question whether the women were coerced into sexual slavery.
Coercion was there, and it was a great part of why girls and women were kidnapped into sexual slavery.
Honda, who was at the forefront of the passage of a landmark 2007 resolution condemning Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women, said recent talks between Seoul and Tokyo on the matter were productive and helpful, even though they have yet to reach a breakthrough on the issue. The lawmaker said that the U.S. will continue to communicate with the Japanese Prime Minister to move the issue forward.
Hopefully now we can move this issue forward to create a greater political pressure and peer pressure to the government of Japan.
The Japanese-American lawmaker is in Seoul for a 5-day visit, which will take him to a house for former sex slaves, as well as a string of meetings with government officials. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, despite this week's capital flight and emergency currency measures, Russian President Vladimir Putin says his economy is going to bounce back in 2 years' time from now. In his annual year-end news conference, Putin said the country's central bank and government are taking adequate measures to address the current economic woes.
There are also some questions to both the government and the central bank about the timing and quality of those measures, but as a whole, the actions are absolutely adequate and in the right direction. There is also no doubt, and I would like to underline it, the rebound, the subsequent rise of the ruble, and the exit from the current situation is unavoidable.
Now, Russia's national currency has been struggling to cope with falling global oil prices and the effects of Western sanctions. And while we're on the worrying economic situation in Russia, some emerging economies have already experienced a kind of spillover effect, and experts in Seoul are waiting to see what effect this is going to have on the Korean economy. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Fears of a full-blown financial crisis in Russia are spreading as inflation is rising amid slow growth, fueled by falling oil prices and Western sanctions. A recession in Russia will likely bring a slowdown in European exports to Russia, further deepening the recession in Europe. This, by extension, is expected to curtail Korean exports to Europe. Seoul-based Hyundai Research Institute estimates Korean exports to drop by 2.9 percentage points next year, and says it may go down even further if capital flight increases among emerging countries.
Massive foreign capital outflow in emerging markets is expected to move into the Korean market, which is considered as a safer haven. The foreign capital influx will then appreciate the Korean won against the greenback, further strengthening the Korean won.
And because of the strengthening currency, Korean exporters are expected to further lose their price competitiveness in global trade. The researcher adds it'll bring a shock equivalent to that of the 2009 financial crisis, as Korean exports to Russia and Europe drop. Those exports to Russia dropped by 3% during the January to October period from the same period last year to just over $9 billion. In response, Seoul's financial watchdog said it would closely monitor the economies of Russia, Europe, and emerging markets. Battered by falling oil prices, the Russian ruble has depreciated more than 60% against the greenback from the start of the year. Kim Jung, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Friday morning here in Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim in the News Centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. The White House says the Sony cyber attack blamed on North Korea is being treated as a serious national security matter that would warrant an appropriate response. White House spokesman John Earnest said the cyber strike had revealed personal emails by Sony executives and pushed out unreleased films, among other things, was done by a sophisticated actor with malicious intent. He said America's top national security officials have been meeting daily about the attack. He did not attribute it to North Korea, though, noting that the investigation by the FBI and the Justice Department was still ongoing. Unnamed U.S. officials had earlier said the cyber attack was state-sponsored with the involvement of Pyongyang. Meanwhile, there are calls to get the $44 million movie The Interview released for free online. Sony Pictures is under fire for pulling the release of the raunchy comedy about the fictional assassination of North Korea's leader. One-time presidential contender Mitt Romney tweeted Sony, saying it should not cave but fight back, and asked viewers of the movie for a $5 contribution to fight Ebola. Another strike in Nigeria. Heavily armed Boko Haram militants have kidnapped 185 women and children after storming the remote village of Gumsuri. The attack happened on Sunday, but is just being known as survivors reached the city of Maiduguri. At least 32 people are said to have also been killed in the siege on the northeastern village. The attack comes as thousands continue to flee from the region to escape the violence by the Islamist militant group. Niger alone has seen the arrival of over 87,000 refugees since last May. Japan continued to be pounded by a blizzard wreaking havoc on Thursday night. Part of northern and central Honshu saw record snowfall of up to 205 centimeters of the white stuff, while other areas recorded wind speeds of up to 31 meters per second. Thursday proved to be a deadly day after 8 people were reported killed and weather-related deaths, raising the total number of fatalities to 11, this according to local reports. Japan's weather agency had advised residents against venturing outdoors as the snowstorm shuttered schools and public transportation and grounded hundreds of flights.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Shares in Industries, the de facto holding company of Samsung Group, more than doubled on the firm's stock market debut on Thursday. Shares closed at 113,000 won, or roughly $102 from its $48 IPO. Now, Industries, which has businesses ranging from fashion to theme parks, immediately became the 14th most valuable company on the benchmark Kospi, with its market capitalization standing at around $14 billion at the end of the trading day. Seoul Industries IPO is part of Samsung Group's restructuring plan that aims to help heir apparent Lee Jae-yong take the reins from his ailing father, Lee Gun-hee. The world's largest furniture retailer has arrived in Korea finally. IKEA opened its doors to the public for the first time on Thursday, and it's hoping to thrive in a furniture market that's already pretty saturated. Connie Kim reports.
The freezing cold weather isn't stopping people from waiting in long lines to be among the first inside Korea's first IKEA. Now, as you can see behind me, there is a seemingly endless line of people waiting to get a glimpse of the Scandinavian-style furniture inside.
This is new to me and quite different from conventional Korean furniture.
However, the Swedish furniture giant's entry into the market wasn't without controversy. Known for its low prices, IKEA's arrival has sparked concern among small and family-owned businesses that offer ready-made furniture at premium prices. IKEA has also caused a stir for inflating the prices of some of its pieces compared to global locations. It also drew criticism for its high transport and assembly fees. But IKEA says it's ready to offer something different to appeal the Korean market.
We have studied the Korean market. We have done a lot of home visits. We visited over 80 homes and had really thorough interviews with the people living in these mainly apartments to understand the needs.
IKEA designed this living room set specifically for the Korean market, tailoring it to the space in local apartments. The company created new storage units for the verandas often found in Korean apartments and special beds designed to fit into the space so people can use the space to get a quick rest. After discovering that Korean parents traditionally spend more on children's furniture than parents in other countries, IKEA Korea expanded their selection. In short, IKEA is offering more choices and possibly lower prices. But the question now is how consumers will react to what the Swedish furniture giant has to offer and what that means for the competition in the local market. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Looks like they had a busy first day in IKEA there. Now, Google's top 10 most search items of 2014 has already come out. Topping the searches on that was Robin Williams, who died earlier this year, followed by the World Cup in Brazil. Now, that's what people have been searching for globally, but what have Koreans been checking out online in 2014? Now, Kwon So-ah gives us a rundown.
8 out of 10 Koreans use the web, and around 80% of them use the portal website Naver to do their searches. So what have Koreans been typing into their favorite search engine this year? Ranking first, somewhat ironically, was the country's second biggest portal website, Daum. It was followed by weather and video sharing website YouTube. In fourth came the video game League of Legends. And free domestic banks made it onto the list too, as well as webtoons, which are gaining in popularity along with the rise of smartphone readers. And now let's break it down into some specific categories. The most tragic incident of the year, the sinking of the Seoul ferry, was the most searched about current affairs story of 2014. The person most looked up was figure queen Kim Yeona, who retired this year after the Sochi Olympics. In the movie category, the Disney blockbuster Frozen topped the list, and its popularity expanded into the music sector as well with Let It Go. In sports, it was none other than the biggest sporting event of the year, the Brazil World Cup. Now, weather wasn't just a popular search on the Naver website, but also on its mobile version, as well as on Google Korea. The word saw a notable increase in the week of the college entrance exam in November. What amused netizens was that the most looked up item on Korea's #2 portal site, Daum, was Naver. And as we saw earlier, it was the same for Naver's most searched items. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the ongoing planning for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, as Korean Prime Minister Chung Hong-won met with the organizing committee on Thursday. And the Prime Minister himself made it clear that the 2018 Winter Games will not be split with another city, as he dismissed any possibilities of co-hosting the event. And during the meeting, officials approved the plans for a ceremony hall where the opening and closing ceremonies will take place, as a 40,000-seater will begin its construction in January of next year. Meanwhile, new transportation plans were also revealed, as travel time from Incheon International Airport to the Winter Games venue will be shortened by 20 minutes with the renovations. And speaking of winter sports, the fourth stage of the 2014-2015 ISU Short Track World Cup kicks off today in Seoul, as a couple of teenagers are expected to get all the spotlight during the event. Now, one of the teenagers is Olympic gold medalist Shim Seok-ki, who at the age of 17 has been dominating in the women's competition this season, only to have her 13 consecutive gold medal finish come to an end last week in Shanghai. But 16-year-old Choi Min-jung has been making the headlines as of late, even beating out Shim Seok-ki in the 1,000-meter event last week. Now, all eyes will be on the two teen sensations as the event kicks off at the Mokdong Ice Rink. And now moving over to baseball this time, where Thursday marked D100 until the 2015 KBO season kicks off. It also meant 100 days until the Suwon KT Wiz make their KBO debut. Now on Thursday, the 10th KBO team held a ceremony at the Suwon Baseball Stadium, introducing some of their newest acquisitions to the media. Their veterans like Lee Dae-hyung, Kim Sa-yul, and former MVP Kim Sang-hyun were on hand, looking forward to the 2015 season with their new team. And while it's unlikely that they'll have a top 4 finish in their inaugural season, confidence is high for the Suwon KT Wiz. And finishing things off in swimming, where after it was revealed that Soon Young testing positive with a banned substance was reported 6 months after the initial date, the World Anti-Doping Agency have decided not to take it to the Court of Arbitration for Sports. Now, according to Ben Nichols, a spokesperson for WADA, they have reviewed the case file and decided they will not appeal the 3-month ban imposed by the Chinese Swimming Federation. This also means that the Olympic swimmer will not be facing the Court of Arbitrations for Sports, while the China Anti-Doping Agency just received a warning for the delayed reporting. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. It's another cold morning we are waking up to. The current temperature in Seoul is about -7 degrees Celsius. That's 5 degrees higher than yesterday. But sensory temperature is a lot lower than that, hovering below -10. But finally, cold snap is forecast to ease up this afternoon, getting up to above freezing. But we have another band of snow in the evening. Seoul will receive about 1 in 7 centimeters into tomorrow morning, but till then we'll have clear blue skies throughout the day. So with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now the morning low here in Seoul is kicking off at -7, and the afternoon high will hike up to 1, while Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 4 and 5, and Busan will top out at 6 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, it looks like Jeju Island will have a mild day today with highs peaking to 10, but Daejeon and Dokdo will only see a high of 3 and 7 respectively. Bundle up before you're heading out, and if you plan to be outside till the late hours, have an umbrella handy with you. That's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Good  morning. 6 a.m. on Friday, December 19th here in Seoul. I am Mark Broome, and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning: 6 a.m. on Friday, December 19th here in Seoul. I am Mark Broome, and you're tuned in to Daybreak.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Do stay tuned to Arirang because Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a great day. Goodbye.